It is perhaps understandable that we do not give the Rolling Stones much credence for being studio whiz kids. This is because the Rolling Stones have been steadfastly loyal to the flag that is rock and roll, and they have used fairly much the same formula to make music for close to 200 years, according to their own admission. With the legendary Keith Richards waxing lyrical on all things studio-related, we were taken aback when we discovered this gem from 1986. You don't see that many interviews with a Rolling Stone discussing studio technology, so you can imagine how surprised we were when we found it. He was even able to anticipate how we would all end up utilizing it in the end. The fact that they don't provide a great deal of information regarding recording technology is truly unfortunate. On the other hand, we have dug through the archives and found an interview with the one and only Keith Richards that is an absolute gem. In this interview, he discussed studio technology, how the band embraced it or did not embrace it, and what he thought would happen in the future. The interview, which was published in the issue of International Musician and Recording World that was released in November 1986, is remarkable for a number of incredible reasons, not the least of which is the fact that the Rolling Stones would appear to be considered an old band at this point in time. The author of the piece stated that Richards appeared to be looking more battered than a vintage Telecaster at the beginning of their career, which was only 25 years old. Additionally, the article stated that Richards is not an oil painting at the age of 43. However, many good riffs are played on an old guitar. What the interview did, however, was that it did not spend any time in asking Richards about technology, which is a fresh approach in comparison to the many others that have been taken before, and since that would simply ask him about playing the guitar. In addition, Richards did not hold back when it came to the topic of studio developments. This band has been through everything, as was mentioned earlier, and he began by discussing the band's initial encounters with recording equipment. Even though the Stones may have utilized 2 tracks, the majority of the albums that were released during those early days were mono recordings. This was the way that the records were intended to be utilized. In spite of this, Richards was convinced that if it was recorded in mono, that was how it was intended to be listened to, and there is still a strong argument for that concept to this day. However, then something called stereo came into being. Listening to a record by Muddy Waters from 1952 in stereo is not something I want to do. The mere fact that it now bears the stereo stamp does not mean that it is acceptable. To clarify, I am referring to the time when I was a member of the Rolling Stones and the term stereo was introduced in the middle of the 1960s. At that time, both of our speakers were set to mono. The music technology industry was, of course, booming at the time of the interview. In the year 1986, digital technology was beginning to make its way into recording studios. Although it was not of the highest quality, it is important to note that computers were beginning to locate their footing, and a wide variety of processors were being utilized on each and every track of each and every song. With regard to this most recent technologies, on the other hand, Richards asserted that he had an opinion of the most recent technological advancement, 1986. Who among us would like to enter a studio and make use of every piece of technology that is around? The Stones are still going strong, of course, and it is likely that they are still adhering to the same studio ethic after nearly 40 years having passed. And just in case you aren't getting the message, Richards drives home the point with this final comment, which probably will cause all of us to reflect a little bit on our obsessions with studio gear.